We are live. And I do know friends know what I mean. It's persistent, I'm talking, nobody's agreeing. It's straight suicide, but everybody's swinging. Countless 100 black men, that's what I'm seeing. How many questions are there really down? The ones that you want is a crowd black down. So Chuck, I'm fighting the power right now. Things that you play with PE, putting it in, putting your life on the line. So I can rap now. The next generation still singing for the power. That's the power. Good evening, everybody. We are here, episode 5, Coffee for Your Soul, with my guests, my best friends tonight. It's going to be a great show. We got Avalanche in the house. We got Black Maxime in the house. We have 3 amazing guests tonight. Our surprise guest, Mr. Gregory Brown, Mr. Nate Ferdinand, and Sheila Jerome. Here we go. We're going to talk about a great topic tonight, episode 5, the burning massacres, destruction, and the fallout. These stories that we're going to talk about today are chilling reminders of how acts of terrorism affected the lives of African-American men, women, and children after slavery. These historical accounts are not always taught in schools and are consistently minimized. Well, tonight, the entire panel, we're going to help become history teachers. We're going to share examples. We're going to talk about the things that highlighted the violence that perpetrated in Black communities. American history should remind us all of the communities affected by racial violence, terrorism in Arkansas, Florida, Louisiana, North Carolina, and so many, many more. The black people that were affected were victims of racist violence based on economic anxiety and threats to white womanhood. So tonight we're going to jump right in and discuss the historical events. And to rehash, we're going to talk about we have 3 guests. We're going to talk about Greg Brown from Orlando, Florida, Nate Ferdinand from Port St. Lucie, Florida, Sheila Jerome from Memphis, Tennessee. This is episode 5. We're going to take a quick step back. I'm gonna put it in context for you right now. The East St. Louis Massacre in 1917 launched a reign of racial terror throughout the United States that historians say stretched from 1917 to 1923. When the all-Black town of Rosewood, Florida was destroyed. During that period, known as the Red Summer, at least 97 lynchings were recorded, thousands of Black people were killed, and thousands of Black-owned homes and businesses were burnt to the ground. Fire and fury fueled massacres in at least 26 cities: Washington, D.C., Chicago, Illinois, Omaha, Nebraska, Elaine, Arkansas, Charleston, South Carolina, Columbus, Tennessee, Houston, Texas, and Tulsa, Oklahoma. Tonight, we're going to talk about a lot of this, and we're going to make everybody understand why this history needs to be spoken about, because it does percolate into what's going on in our nation today. And we need to make sure that everybody understands that. We're going to give information. We're going to share some sites for you guys to talk about. So I'm going to pass it over to the crew. This is where we're here tonight. Again, we're going to be talking about our first topic, which is going to be Tulsa, aka Black Wall Street, in 1921. I'm going to throw the ball over to Dimitri. Go ahead, my brother.
What's going on? Good evening, everybody. Welcome, friends and guests. And, good evening to the panelists. We're talking about these massacres that happened throughout the history of the United States that many are not aware of and were buried in the history books, and they were never discussed. So we want to, kind of talk about these situations openly and educate a little bit about what happened. So in Tulsa, Oklahoma, like John was saying, in 1921, a young man was getting on an elevator. He was a shoe shine worker, and he was told he had to use the elevator to go upstairs to use the bathroom. So he was on the way to the bathroom. The elevator operator was a white female, who no one really knows the exact story, but Some say he stepped on her toe when he went in the elevator. Others say that he tripped and fell into her. Either way, she screamed. He ran, and the next day it came out that the police went to his house to go and apprehend him. So to put things in context, the town was known to go down to the courthouse and basically get whoever was being arrested and basically lynch them or kill them. And they did it to a white man also. So basically, the townspeople, the townsmen in Black Wall Street. Now wait, let's put this in context too. Black Wall Street was a very, very successful town. Okay, it had hospitals, it had airports, it had movie theaters, banks. Very successful. They just finished building a very nice church. It was only 40 days old before it was burned down. So a lot of to put things in context, people in the town were already jealous of the success of the Black people, the African American people of the town. They saw that they were starting to compete in the economy. They saw that they were starting to be successful and elevate through the ranks, and they were jealous. So any opportunity they had, they were taking advantage of. So let's get back to when they go get Dick Rowland. They went to go get him from his home. They brought him to the courthouse. The men of Black Wall Street got together, went down to the courthouse armed, and basically to make sure that they did not lynch this guy, because the town was already starting to get all riled up and show up a mob at the courthouse. So in that incident, there was a shootout. Supposedly, someone tried to grab one of their guns. A white man was shot, and 2 white men were killed that day. And it was just a shootout there. It was just a shootout at the courthouse. What ensued next was the press putting in the papers that a black mob killed some white men. They said that a black male, a Negro male, attacked a female in the elevator, and it got the town very upset. So the town created a mob. What ensued next was riots, burning. 300 residents or more were killed. 9,000 people were left homeless. 1,200 buildings were destroyed, and estimated $50 to $100 million of property was damaged and burned down. So this is just one of the many, and as we're looking at the footage from those riots, they literally destroyed like 40 city blocks. Nobody was really spared. Anybody, the mobs just rolled through the town and basically massacred anyone they could. And like I said, this is just one of many that we're going to be discussing throughout the show.
Okay. Nate, Greg, Sheila, would you like to chime in?
Yeah, I think one of the themes that we noticed in this story and everything that all the other instances we're going to talk about is that at the beginning, normally there's a white woman involved that feels threatened by a black man. A theme that we see happening even today, where they're weaponizing white women and using them as a starting point to attack black people and to destroy our communities.
Right.
You notice that that's what happened, on Black Wall Street. And we're going to talk about some of the other instances, some of the other massacres. And it always begins with a white woman feels threatened. So I think when we're walking around today in society and we see that white women can easily pick up the phone and says, I feel threatened by a black man, and they say they don't know what they're talking about, they didn't know that they're putting our lives in danger. The history already shows that they've been doing this for centuries.
Right.
And I think that's one of the things we're going to see. That's probably something that, when they say they want to be our allies and they want to understand how they can help during this time, that they don't want people to help, with this movement, is that they have to understand that they have to stop using the fact that they're white and calling the cops against us, is one of the things that we're going to see continually throughout all of this.
the themes of the massacres exactly. One of the things is that the white community felt threatened, um, and and to be honest, they were starting to get a little jealous, of the prosperity of the so-called the Negro towns. What I also saw that's very consistent in these stories is the press playing a role in glorifying the story and making the victim look like the the aggressor. Um, this is something we deal with today. Someone gets hurt, someone gets killed, and the first thing they want to know is dig up their record and see what they did. Um, you know, the newspaper, like, they put headlines in the new they put in headlines, like, painted the narrative as like Roland was the aggressor. So what they did is dehumanize him, so the town could, basically go after who they wanted to and use that as an excuse.
So just to chime in for a few seconds, like Greg said about the white woman, I do think it's the white woman that actually holds the power here, but it's not only the white woman, it's women in general. For me, like a black woman is queen. So a black woman comes to me and tells me whoever. It doesn't have to, it could be another black guy that says something about him. She feels threatened. I already puff up my chest. We got to protect our women. So if you think about it that way, we want to protect our women. Naturally, I would assume most black people are attracted to black people. So you want to protect that woman. So you think about it, the white man is the one with the power. If he goes down to, you just get down to the simple basics of it, the white man has the power, but what gets him most emotional is a threat to his white woman. So if, like you said, you can look at it, it usually starts with a white woman, but that's not only riots, that's history in general. Who's
Right.
watched Troy? Troy was started over a woman.
Right.
That whole wars were waged over women. Like that's how this shit happens. So, that's another question. Can I curse on this? I don't know if this is a family-oriented show, but
Yeah,
Be nice.
okay, I'll be nice. I'll try not to curse because my vulgarities get me places.
it happens.
Yeah, so that's how things happen. So in history, women are the reason why wars are waged, and rightfully so. They're the child birthers, they're the keepers of life, right? So when we talk about riots, I think it's more than that. I think that they, like Avalanche was saying, they are jealous or afraid. They're afraid of certain things. They're afraid of prosperity, and in that prosperity, they're going to lose something. So if they wanted to lynch someone, sure, they could have marched down to the courthouse and got that guy right out of where he was and accused him of raping the elevator attendant or whatever it was. And they didn't have to touch Black Wall Street. They didn't have to touch Rosewood. They didn't have to touch any of these places. But what did they do? They burned down the only tangible thing that we had to be prosperous. So
Right.
I think it's just a vehicle. Like these instances, all of them are just vehicles to put us back in a lesser position because of the way that they think.
Max?
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
I mean,
go ahead, man.
oh no, I mean just to kind of piggyback on what Nate said regarding the white woman or woman in general being a catalyst for, the respective men's violent acts. You could even, and this might be for another show as well. We could talk about race in film and race in Hollywood. That can be a topic of itself. But you look at a film like Birth of a Nation, actually one of the first motion picture, might be the actually first motion picture in the United States. And the whole premise of Birth of a Nation was the threat of the black man upon the white woman, the brooding threat of the recently emancipated black man coming to, let loose his savage wiles upon white women. And that film expressly showed, and mind you, everyone black in that film was in blackface, but it expressly showed that threat that the black male represented to the white community. And I'm sure, and I could definitely allude to it myself, in corporate business situations, companies, you feel the same thing. If you're in an office and you're, Mr. Man, and you're chatting and you're being charming and charismatic and talking to Cindy over there in her cube, and she's just smiling and twirling her hair, that absolutely affects. I've seen it. It affects white men. Who the hell is this motherfucker think he is talking to Cindy? Cindy won't even go to lunch with me. Look at him with his white beard. So it kind of speaks to what you're talking to, where that almost, we would call it an existential threat to what they perceive as their white superiority, does actually, can emanate from black men, and in as much as talking to them. Look at Emmett Till, not so much a massacre of a city, but a massacre of a man.
Right.
Nothing else than a whistle. So, whether this fellow in Black Wall Street stepped on her toe or fell into her, and what happened? He booked out of there. You're like, oh shit, I got to get out. It still wasn't enough, because just the perceived lie of a threat from that black man was able to burn down 30 city blocks, and city of black prosperity. So the white female holds a huge onus, in terms of how her corresponding white men acts out upon perceived slights. Anyway,
Sheila, join it.
So yeah, I had for the past 20 years, I would say for the past 15 years, I've been looking at the issue of the economics as it relates to this country. And the more I look at it, the more I realize that is it racism or is it economicism or classism? And the reason I say that is because if you go back and you look at the stories of the massacres, rather be Wall Street and so forth, what happened is there's a belief of those so-called, those certain white men or the white groups that felt like those blacks shouldn't have certain things. You follow me? So I don't much think it was an issue of, I think race is the excuse, but at the core of it, it's it's the economics. It's the fact that this person who I'm being told that I'm better than, this person or this group who I've been raised to believe that I'm better and more educated than them have more resources than me. So here I am using the excuse of this lady being afraid as the reason to go and burn, because similar to what brother Greg said, all it was an excuse. It's easy to go and address that one person, but you need to find an excuse, igniter, the fire starter, to go and burn down a whole entire community, because it's not the act that you're afraid of, it's the prosperity of that group. That group's ability to be so to go in and do so much, that group ability to build wealth after 25 years out of slavery, that group ability to create a Wall Street, and here you are as a so-called educated, not educated white man, seeing that these group of people who 40 years ago were slaves now are property owners. So to me, it wasn't just the fact that this happened. It was the fact that here's my reason to finally go and burn some shit. You follow me? And that was the reason. It had nothing to do with sex. It had nothing to do with harassment. Just give me a reason to go burn, and that was my reason.
That was it.
That's my opinion, but
they used that as a reason to go and do what they've been wanting to do, which is destroy the town.
Can I give a quick response to that? I agree. I agree for the most part, but I'm not gonna let white people off the hook that easy and say that racism was the excuse to burn it down. Because if you think about it, when we came to this country, killed all the Native Americans, took what they needed to, enslaved the black people, let the black people go, and brought in immigrants. We're going to bring in immigrants because
I can't anything he said.
Am I good?
I hear you.
Over here, we can hear you.
I can.
Did you hit the mute button?
No.
Jay,
Okay.
Continue.
Continue on.
So
John, I can't hear nothing he's saying. Jesus Christ.
That might be your reception, Shill.
Go ahead, Nate.
No,
when those immigrants came over, these native white people is what we'll call them for right now. These native English or Europeans did not like the Italians. They did not like the Irish people. They were in the state that we're in now. But when the Irish were prospering, or when the Italians were prospering, they didn't burn down their cities. They didn't burn down their Wall Streets, because racism played a factor in that. Racism is a factor there. So yes, there is more there. There's a fear of economic degradation for them, but racism is definitely there, because if you think about it, and it's cringeworthy for some people, but you have to think about it like an animal. I'm not going to let this dog get more money than me. So what do I have to do to make sure he doesn't get more money than me? I'm not going to send him to the West and let him do his thing. No, that's what I'll do with the Irish. That's what I'll do with the Italians. But the people that are not even people, like they are less than me because I am racist, because I feel this way, I'm going to burn their ish down. And I'm going to make sure that they are never in a position to do what I am doing now. So yes, it was definitely, like I said before, it's a vehicle, but I will never let them off the hook for something that they need to accept that racism. They need to accept that, and they need to use their power now to, at any cost, change what has come from that. So yeah, it stemmed from what the match was a white woman. That was the match, but they intentionally went and burned down our property because they know that is the only way that we will grow. So economics is definitely a factor, but racism is right there next to it.
No, racism was.
Nate, if I can respond, I agree with you, but I think when you look at it from a deeper issue, right? Let's look at it, right? Why is it that throughout the last 100 years, a large group of educated white, a large group of white men who are not educated, who don't go to school, who don't have education, they always seem to believe they're a lot more higher on the totem pole than a black man who's educated. You follow me? So what happened is they're being sold a lie that because I'm white, I'm better than, I don't care how many degrees this black guy got, right? So what happens is, because what happens is, but why they're being sold that? They're being sold that because what happened is, as long as we're fighting that, as long as me and that white boy are fighting each other, those so-called elites, those with the real power, will stay in power. You follow me? So as long as me and this white boy who are on the same level are seeing each other as enemies, those who are really running things, those in government, those are the elites, that 1%, that 0.5% are doing everything they got to do. Because you know why? Keep Schiller and JoJo fighting, we good. So at the end of it, why is it that and Dimitri said it best? Why is it that the media play it up? You follow me? Why is it that the press allow it to
they pander to their crowd? They're
exactly.
Like Fox panders to old white people. CNN is going to pander to progressive. It's like news isn't news anymore. Like
I agree.
What you want to hear.
But you got.
Can I jump in real quick, gentlemen? I just want to say something to what Sheila said, is that racism and classism are not mutually exclusive. They're both on the seesaw. They're going back and forth at all times. We can't say that racism and classism are two totally different things. So in that aspect, I agree with Sheila, because they use classism to put us in certain categories, and they use racism to enforce those classes that they put us in.
Yes, sir. Yes,
so
sir.
They're both on the same seesaw. I mean, they're both right there. They're the same thing.
But you
can't have one without the other.
Historically, the massacres that took place in these United States, those were all race related. We have, economics. Obviously, they were jealous of the town was prosperous, but to go in and destroy literally every single business, every single home, residential, everything, they destroyed everything, and you know, they left 9,000 people without a home. You know how 9,000 people's homes destroyed in 48 hours? That's insane. Then they were
That's warfare, yo. That's
listen.
warfare. You don't like
It was
if I
hold on. It was that's exactly what it was because they literally brought in the National Guard, an estimated 20,000 men, and their job was basically to do the same thing the mobs was doing. They was not slowing it down. They didn't allow anyone to put out the fires. The local fire stations were not allowed to put out the fires. They let it burn down completely and totally. What I found crazy was after the aftermath, which people don't talk about, you know, they had detention areas where they basically gathered everybody who was trying to flee. And in these detention areas, they interviewed everybody and they decided on who was going to go to jail or get these bans. And let me make this, I want to get this right. So the ban said police protection on it. And that's what you had to get to walk around town without getting messed with. They literally had bans that they had to use. The insurance didn't give them anything back for their property because they claimed that riots were not covered in the policy. So those people lost literally like 20 years of hard work and wealth. And a lot of people just left Oklahoma totally and just left. They never to this day have been reimbursed for their property or their homes. You know, there was mass graves. This thing was really, really intense, and it was fueled by race. If you watch some of the videos, actually, of the people who actually, I don't know if there's any survivors now, but they did do a lot of documentaries with the survivors. I mean, their stories were horrific.
So I want to make sure that this conversation is great. So all this stuff is going on, but Black Wall Street is a very big topic. We have some other things we want to talk about. We're gonna stay in the Red Summer, and we're gonna move over to Elaine, Arkansas, 1919. Okay, and to understand racial unrest, you know, people must understand the Red Summer. This is what we're talking about. You have white people organized with a specific purpose. They want to keep Black people in a subordinate position, as we discussed thus far, so they do not dare assert their equality or autonomy in their community. I'm going to pass it over to Max to kind of talk about a little bit about Elaine.
No, John, excuse me. I'm talking about the 1963 massacre.
Okay.
I mean, as far as the Elaine massacre, that was something that happened in Arkansas. Pretty much the same story, but this one has a lot to do with economics. Shill. Basically, the sharecroppers. What's going on?
No, go ahead.
Basically, the sharecroppers were getting upset or feeling that they were being cheated with the policies for their crops that they were working for. A lot of them got caught up in little tricks of contracts and law that they weren't able to tell that what they were basically being tricked into were contracts they would never be able to really get themselves out of. So they would end up working for the year and find out that they owed more because of seed and all other recuperations that they put in the contracts. So eventually they got a hold and figure out, okay, we're getting cheated here. We're not getting anything. And they put together a union. When they put together this union, it was basically a group of Black sharecroppers that put a union together. They actually went to Little Rock, Arkansas, and they got a white attorney who was very, very well known at the time, and he actually took their case. So they started to actually make noise in the area, and the white people were getting afraid. You know, they were like, okay, these guys are asking for more money. They're getting attorneys now. This is getting out of hand. And long story short, they went into the town and ended up killing 200 people. What's crazy about this story is they went and charged the people who started the union and actually charged them for the murders of the people that they killed. So, you know, back to being, tied into economics also. Let me
add something into that, Dimitri. So just from that perspective of what Abby said was, through this whole process, 200 Black people were charged. 12 people, the Elaine 12, were set to be executed. In that process, This is the first time the NAACP went against the Supreme Court and won. And I found out the day that they had won, they had got them exonerated was on my birthday. So when you sit there and step back and think about all that history of that, they went into the town in Elaine, Arkansas, multiple bodies lost, thrown into multiple graves. People were strung up. People were hit over the head with stones. White women were beating other black women. And to have that happen, and then for them to be on the cusp of death, this is the one time the NAACP got an opportunity to say that we can do something about it, and feel that they could win. They got it exonerated. The governor dropped the charges after a while, after all that time. But it's a point of it's unacceptable, and the level of things that have occurred for people seeing black people prosper in a community, and get jealous, and to Chiller's point, classism to racism, it brings it all into the house. And to Nate's point, it's up to them to fess up to the point of what they've done wrong, right? How can you do it better? You have a voice, use your voice, because we're not gonna be able to do all this together by ourselves, because we have to have people sit there and speak. You can't be an ally. I listening to Black in the Day podcast, one of the new words that I've heard is accomplice. I don't want accomplice, ally, anything, right? It's as easy as pie when you sit there and step back and think about the golden rule. What is right? What is wrong? It is not hard.
Okay, so to that point, by the way, Black in the Days is a pretty good podcast. I listened to it yesterday. So indeed, what we're finding out, and to Schiller's point, is that it's about economics, right? If they see that black people have an opportunity to even the playing field, because we know the almighty dollar is all it's about. Everyone says vote, 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 vote. That's what they tell us. Rich people, they tell them go lobby. They tell rich people go lobby if they want to affect change. Go lobby a politician. They tell the rest of us to go vote. So it's about economics. So when we see these things happening, it is about classism, because the poor white man living in Buffalo in a mobile home thinks he's better than me.
But that's socially programmed. That's socially programmed.
I know. So what happens, what we need to do is, while we're talking about these events in history that are happening, is how do we change the narrative for white people if they don't think that, if they're comfortable where they sit, they're comfortable in their situation, they have a roof over their head, they have food on their tables, they're not being affected, they don't have to worry that if they go running, a black man is going to shoot them. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. They don't have to worry that when the cop pulls them over, he's going to put a knee on their neck. Okay, they don't have to have that conversation with their kids. John has to have that conversation with his boys. I had to have that conversation with my daughter. Anybody else that has kids on here has to have that conversation with their kids. We have to have that conversation with each other. Hey, be careful when you go out. Because we know when we were young, when we were running the streets, we're lucky to be here to have this conversation. But white people, they say they want to be allies, and they say they want to come in and help. But until they're uncomfortable enough, until we push it in their face and say, this is what's happening, not a lot's going to change. Because the same things that were happening back then are happening today. Back then, it was, okay, the black man is making moves where he's actually getting some sort of financial economic freedom. What do we want to do? We want to cut him off at the knees because we don't want him to have power. The black woman starts a business. We're not, white people aren't going to support her. And those things were happening back then. They burned down Wall Street because they were afraid of the power of our money. Here we are in the 21st century. They're still afraid of the power of our money because we spend trillions of dollars. If we owned actual businesses as they did back in the time of Black Wall Street, or even in Arkansas, where these farmers wanted to unionize and build something and actually own it, we could affect change. But right now, we could boycott for a month, but at the end of the month, we still got to go to Target. Black folks don't own a store where we could sell stuff. So I think in these times, one of the things we need to do is we have to start thinking about how we could build that economic power so that white people actually feel it, because the only way they feel it is in their pockets. All the talking doesn't mean nothing to them.
I have a short rebuttal to that. And again, I agree, but I think we're doing ourselves a disservice if we keep calling it classism. I really do. At the end of the day, it is about money. It's about power. It is. But if you talk to an Italian person, they're not going to say that they're white. They're going to say that they're Italian. If you talk to an Irish person, they're not going to say that they're white. They're going to say that they're Italian. Race is a social construct. So when they came here, when they came to America, they struggled just like we have struggled in the beginning. But they got out of that. Why? Why have they gotten out of that and we haven't? It's because they have the white people, or the European people, I should say, if I'm going Irish, Italian, the European people have stated that because of our skin color, we're less than the Italians, we're less than the Irish, we're all white. Hey guys, we're all white. Them people over there with this skin, that's who you need to worry about. Because again, if Emmett Till whistled at somebody, they lynched Emmett Till, but you talk about Black Wall Street, if he stepped on somebody's toe, at worst, jail him. Don't burn down our facilities. They don't do that to an Irish person. So when the Irish people were in the ghettos, if they raped a white woman, they're not going to burn down the Irish community. They're going to take that person, they might lynch him, they might do something like that. So classism is there. It is. Power, the almighty dollar is it. But if we continue to say that we need to focus on classism, we're going to miss the inherent racism that is here. We need to address that these MFers are racist. Like there are people in power that are racist. They do not like you specifically for your skin color.
All right, Schiller, go. Hold on, Schiller, go.
Nate, you know what? Here's the one thing that I've learned, right? I've learned that somehow, some way, the Pakistanis who came from their country with the less education than some of us have come in places like in Memphis and Atlanta, and now have a higher income family-wise per capita.
They got grants
than blacks. Or wait,
they got grants.
The Indians do it.
They got
the
grants.
Japanese do it.
They got grants.
No. It's not. It's the Africans do it. You know what? No. You know what?
They get grants too, though.
Wait. Okay, you know what? Let me go and bring it home. The Haitian community in South Florida overall has a higher per capita income than the African American community. There is no grants for Haitians.
Absolutely.
So basically, what I'm trying to tell you is it's economics. The reason that you don't mess with the Indians is because the economics. It's because we hire lobbyists. You want to deal with racism? Deal with economics. Okay?
Hold on.
You indirectly address racism through economics. As long as your economics is spread out, as long as that $7 trillion, when the black dollar is together, it has more buying power than 170 countries. As long as your wealth is spread out, as long as your wealth is not to the point where it's controlled and is monitored, and we can aggregate everything, we're always going to be seen as the ones to deal with. Right now speaking, you will not see anybody. Right now speaking, you don't see anybody on TV. Okay, terrorism as bad as it was, certain folks would have been discussed. Pakistanis, Egyptians, or Saudi Arabia. Why? Because of dollars. So hold on. Wait. I'm saying so for me personally, my goal is economics. If I do economics, racism will get addressed. You know, but again, we all
hold on.
One at a time. Go ahead, Dimitri.
Go ahead, B.
You made a great point. You made a point that immigrants come from other countries. They come here and somehow they end up being more prosperous than the Americans that live here that happen to be black. Why is that? Is it that the black Americans are not intelligent enough? Is it that they're not sharp enough? Is it that those people have less intellect than the other people, like the myths that those hold on, like the myths that they taught for hundreds of years, that our brains were smaller, that we were less educated, that we were incapable of learning. Maybe, just maybe, it has something to do with us not being able to read or write for centuries without being mutilated, tongues come out. Maybe 200-300 years of generations not being able to read would affect the future generations. The traumas that those people had affect the future generations that their children had. It was continued with the massacres like we're discussing tonight. It was continued. Yes, they don't go through towns right now and massacre people, but what happens is when a black man has his knee has someone's knee on their neck for 8 minutes and however long, there's still people who are capable of looking at that and completely being desensitized, because the black male is not valued as a human. This is what happens, and this is because of the trauma over the years. It's not that they're more intelligent, it's that the system has created poor schools, crime-infested neighborhoods. They talk about crime in Chicago and crime, but they don't talk about what brought that in. They don't talk about the crack that they brought in. That was under Reagan, the Iran-Contra. You know what I'm saying? They don't talk about that. This is what started a major crime infestation neighborhoods in the hoods across America. It all happened in the late 70s, early 80s, and it continued through. They allowed those drugs to come in. So this is why the African Americans are set back. No one wants to talk about the real issue.
Okay, but
can I jump in on what Dimitri said? Hold on.
Wait.
Let's come around. Nate, go ahead.
Oh,
okay. So we're drifting a little bit away from what we're talking about, but I like this. I like where we're going. This is very constructive. I just want to make sure that everyone knows that when these immigrants didn't come to America like Christopher Columbus came to America and thought that this was India and, oh, I have a better place. No, the U.S. government is saying, come to us. We will give you aid. We will let you start a business if you're from Saudi Arabia. We will let you start a business if you're from Asia. We will give you a grant to do this. But when you come over here, then not mess with them Negroes. Don't mess with them Negroes when you get over here. And when we're talking about Haitians, we're talking about other black people. If you think about it, these communities that we're in, everybody always wants to talk about Chicago. Everybody wants to talk about the ghettos. It has nothing to do with race. Race is a social construct. Just because we have a different color skin pigmentation does not mean that we're different. Like Avalanche was saying, we all have the same brains, all have the same heart. We have different skin, right? There are only 3 things that make up a ghetto. No education, no money, no food. When you have those 3 things, doesn't matter if you're white, Asian, black, purple, Mongolian, don't matter who you are going to have violence. The only time that violence was not a construct of proximity, meaning that I'm going to kill somebody that's right next to me, is through racism. With these riots, they marched miles to go hunt for black people. Never has that happened ever in history. Has somebody walked miles to hunt for somebody of another skin color just because of their skin color? Power and money is top. Greg, chill, I agree with you. Power and money is top. But if we do not address racism as teetering, like you said earlier, Greg, like teetering, we're doing ourselves an injustice.
Greg,
okay. I wanted to go back to what Nate said, and when I'm talking about classism, in no way am I discounting that racism exists. Personal conversations that people have had with me, the anger that I feel over the racism that is being portrayed every day today in America, at points I just don't say anything anymore. So I agree with you 100%. We have to address the racism that exists and that people are pushing at us. But at the same time, while we're screaming, hey, you need to acknowledge that you're a racist and that these are the things that have happened throughout history and these are the things that continue to happen every day when I walk out of my house. In order to change that, we as Black people need to start building our economic base and our economic power. That's why I say they go hand in hand. By no way am I discounting that racism exists, because I agree with you 100%.
But Greg, why haven't African Americans been able to do that? We did it in Black. Hold on, real quick. We did it in Black Wall Street back then. What happened? Why can't they do it now?
What are you talking about? What happened? Their technique worked. They burned the fuck out of that city. They intimidated a whole
Can I tell you something?
That's exactly real quick. I'm gonna let you Max, real quick. What you said is 100% right. The racist system worked and was able to keep African American people in a cage right there in the ghetto. They kept it, and they used everything from the media to entertainment to real talk, hip hop, movies. They used all of that, and they created a system that was able to keep them and the minds captured. And this is what they did. Go ahead, Gregory.
Hold on. I do have I just want to make sure. I got a question that just called in. We have Miss Robin Williams. She has a quick question. Robin, go ahead and ask your question to the panelists.
The strategy was that
can't hear, John.
We need to understand
can't hear.
Economics and our classroom. But we also got to understand that
Robin, hold on. Ask your question again. One more time. Start from scratch.
I was going to just make a comment, kind of, and I guess a question. I had a comment on what we're saying that it's not about racism, classism. There was a comment, at least I think it was made, about economics. But we have to understand that economics works because of racism. The whole reason racism was even structured and created the way it is because of economics and property ownership, and we get back to it. So I think it was Avalanche just asked recently, why haven't Black people been able to do that now? And that is because as we started to empower ourselves and educate ourselves, laws have continually changed, which is like the reason for redlining and voter suppression and other things. So my question, I guess, would be, what can we do now as Black Americans? And part of what we can do now is, again, to understand that we're all Black Americans. We may have cultural backgrounds that are different. Our parents may come from different places. But I would want to know from the panel, too, kind of that same question. What can we do now as Black Americans to build that economic base and power?
Who wants to hit it first?
Can I go
ahead, Greg.
first? I have a couple of
I'm going to hang up, John, because I'm going to listen.
Okay, first I want to address Dimitri's question about why haven't we as Black Americans today been able to do what they were able to accomplish back in Tulsa, Oklahoma, and in other cities and other places where these massacres occurred. So on our chat, there's a Wes Wilson's on our chat, and he said something that I think is very important. He says that we have very individualistic ideas, meaning that when we get into a position of power or we get a little bit of money, we tend to want to take care of ourselves. And as Black people, we don't want to pass on the information. Like, I don't want to tell Chilla, hey, this is what we could do to, level up. I'm not going to say, Nate, hey, I got an idea. If we do this, we can move up to the next tax bracket. As Black people, we're guilty of that.
Why?
Now, I don't agree. Because of the way we were treated in our society. It was beaten to us at first, and then second, it was taught to us.
Now we're talking.
Third, it was taught
this is what we got to
oppressed
get to. You see, hold on, Nate. I'm gonna get to you, Nate. I'm gonna get to you, but this is what we got to get to. You see what I'm saying? We say that we don't communicate, we don't work together. We have to learn economics, but we don't discuss why we're having that issue, because of the history of how they mentally conditioned the ancestors who passed that down to generations and generations, and then created systems and laws and policies and statutes that continue to hold us down, and then created terrorist groups like the KKK, etc.
Nate, 1 second, I promise. After this, the floor is yours. I want to go back and talk about what the question
Self-hate.
that Robin asked us is that
Right, Yogi.
in order for us to change it, we understand what was happening, and this conversation is a good starting point. You see, we're having the conversation. This is what needs to happen. Black folks need to have the conversation of how we can support each other to build that up, and it is in us supporting each other. You know, it's in us supporting what you guys are doing, what you, Dimitri, Max, John, what you guys are doing. This podcast, these conversations are important. It starts with supporting that. We got to support what Robin and Elkin are doing, you know, Black in the Days podcast, Black-owned businesses, Bank Black. You know, no one has the right solution. There's not a one fix. You know, it's going to take steps. Everyone has to find a role where they fit in and play that role. But in order to get back to those days is that we have to invest in us. And I'm going to give you an example. I'm Haitian, by the way, you know, as you can tell by my shirt. But I'm Black first. But I could tell you as a Haitian man, this is what happens. You go to a Haitian restaurant, right? And the service might be mediocre. You know what we're going to do? We're going to talk bad about the restaurant. We're going to talk about, oh, they had their kids there. The food wasn't right. The service wasn't fast. We'll go to a Chinese and we'll never go back to it. But we'll go to a Chinese restaurant and they'll have their kids sitting there doing their homework. The person is going to come back from behind the kitchen, take your order, not even say hello, thank you, please, or whatever. And then we're going to pay them. And you know what we're going to do 2 weeks later? We're going to go back to that same Chinese restaurant, but we won't go back to the Haitian restaurant. It's here. We don't love ourselves. Why do we do that to us? Okay, Nate, the floor is yours.
Okay, so first, I want to be respectful to Robin and answer her question. And then I have something else to say with what you guys are saying. Number one, what do we do now? Okay, I try to think in simplistic, very bottom level layman terms. What did the white people do? They did. So when they got here, when they came and colonized 13 colonies, all that stuff, when they were in Williamsburg, they went to a president. They didn't talk about no president. They talked about their town. Vote in your town. Vote for your city councilman. Vote for your mayor. Vote for your governor. That's where you're going to change things. And it sucks because we say this, but it's going to take years. It took them years to build this systematic or systemic structure that they have of power. It took generations for them to do this. So this isn't going to happen overnight. But what do we need to do? I'm not going to say F the presidency because the Cheeto needs to get out of here. But we need to worry about our city councilmen. We need to worry about our superintendents. All elected officials in your town, you should know about. You should know exactly who they are because those are the people you can roll up on. I can't roll up on the toupee guy, but I can roll up on my city councilman. Hey, bro, I saw you in Publix the other day. Just to let you know, I got 250 people that live in this county, and we don't appreciate X, Y, Z. That's what we can do about that. And that's what we should be doing about that. We need to start at a micro level. We're trying to do macro shit, and it's not going to work. That's just not how we are. People don't understand we're still a minority in this country. It doesn't matter how many black people you get together. We are still the minority. We need to start small. Number two, when you guys were talking about, I almost lost my train of thought. When you guys were talking about what we have to do, or these people that were, I lost my train of thought. I'm not going to take up time. That's all I got. That's all I got for now.
Hold on, Max. I want you to come in. You got something to add?
No, I mean he makes a great point. I think the gist of what we were talking about and all, the vein of white supremacy. Do not be fooled. It is when to quote Paul Mooney, when they were writing that Declaration of Independence and the Constitution, we weren't a part of the story. We weren't supposed to have none of it. We were cattle, 3/5 of a man. So, respect to the black race for hanging around and still causing an uproar. Now, in terms of building our communities, this is key. This is key. And it kind of goes to the root of what this whole show is about, which was massacres of black cities, snuffing out the light of these potential, beacons for success. What's the name of that rapper? I think he's Nigerian.
Akon.
Akon, thank you. he's starting some city. I don't know if it's over in Ghana or somewhere, but he put millions of dollars into it. Who knows? He probably got ancient African tribal money. I don't know. Does that exist? They you never know. You don't know them like the king of the tribe. But the point is, like, he's trying to make a Wakanda, and even when I think to Tracy, John's brother over there in South Carolina, redoing that plantation and building affordable housing for Black folk, it's tough, right? They kill our leaders. It ain't Sharpton. God bless him. I like him. He lost a lot of weight. He ain't who I'm looking at as a Black leader. I know he isn't he a Sigma or one of you. I don't know. Honorary, whatever. I'm down with the Sigma. God bless you guys. The point is, we don't have the Malcolms no more. Because why? Because they killed Malcolm. Because they killed Martin. That level of terror and trauma. Another note we always hearken to. It's valid that we are reluctant to kind of put a foot out. We got to get over that. And part of that comes with protecting ourselves. Second Amendment, as much for you as it is for anybody else. Get you concealed. Black men must be protected. Protect your children, your daughters, your sons. When we stand from a place of power, we're unstoppable. We've shown that historically. That's why we're still here. So, Black massacres, I don't know. Do I see it ever happening again where they come into like a Black successful situation? I mean, I don't know.
It's not necessary. It's not necessary anymore. The system is already created. What we have to do now is get our economics together, start working together as a team. And like you said, support Black businesses. Definitely mentor young men and young ladies on our history and why they may be so frustrated, why they think the way they think. A lot of people make it out of the ghetto and they look back and it's like, why can't you guys do the same? Well, not everyone is going to be as lucky as some of these gentlemen, and some of these women. We have to work together. We have to educate ourselves on what happened so we can understand why we behave in certain ways. Generational curses, that were handed down from those traumas that historically, those massacres, lynchings, and other chaotic events created in the minds of African people, and that stuck around. They were never healed. We were never healed for that.
Quick comment, Avalanche. This is what I was saying.
Can I ask something?
Two seconds. What we didn't talk about was mental health. That's what that's one thing that we didn't talk about. And that's what I was going to say before.
This is what those massacres, the real talk, that's what this whole conversation was about, the massacres and what it did to the mental health of the generations that came after those pains. You understand? Now you're looking at these people and you want to say this and that and this and that, we're going to work together. I get it, but why? Why is the question. This is how we're gonna fix it, because people don't know. A lot of people don't know about these traumas. We weren't taught, to be honest. We were not taught this in school. We were not taught. This is not common history.
Avalanche, one thing. I think we're a little bit too hard on ourselves. Real quick, Snake Eyes. I think we're a little bit too hard on ourselves because sometimes Billy would, from wherever, some white suburbs, gets bullied for 2 years and shoots up a school, and people are like, "Oh, he was bullied," and that's what happened. This is literally hundreds of years of lynching, slavery, chattel slavery. This has never happened to anybody else before, ever. So for us to say, why can't we do it? Because we're broken. We are broken, and it needs to be fixed.
John,
mental health, therapists, all that stuff.
No, you're right.
Hold on. We're not. Listen, we got 40 seconds, right? We're going to time out, right? But guess what?
Before you go, let me say something.
Hold on. We're going to the after show. We got 40 seconds. We're going to continue the discussion. And you know what? I want to make sure. I want to make sure that everybody understands when you come on this show. if we can't finish a topic, we're going to take it back. And I promise you, the after show is even better than sometimes in the beginning of the show. Because you know why? It gets real and people can curse. You know what I'm saying? There's
Hey, hold on, John. Before everybody leaves, can I just say something about what Max said and what Nate said? Nate made a good point about voting in local elections. Max said something about looking for leaders. What are the Malcolm X's? Why are we looking for other people to be our leaders? Be the Malcolm X in your own home.
Right.
Be the Malcolm X in your cipher with the people who are in your circle. Be the Martin Luther King, whoever, the Marcus Garvey, whoever, Tusa, Louverture, whoever you want to be. Be that person in your household, and then it's going to spill out.
I just want everybody to sit there and say coffee for your soul.
Coffee for your soul.
Looking for your soul.